Hi, it's Craig here. I'm going to recite a poem. It's called Garden Monologue Number 2, although it's probably better referred to as Summer Endzone. This is summer. This is a hot summer's day. There's a hot wind. You're being accompanied by some birds. And this is a bit of an end zone in this garden. The poem goes for about 20 minutes, so we'll kick in. And it begins with an epigraph by, and I'll say this in my best Australian accent, Jean Baudrillard, from his collection Fragments. It goes, "Things which have remained hidden since the end of the world, but were not necessarily hidden at the beginning." The heat is in honest service to light, in dedication to afternoon, from high vantage in the garden, lectured to with blades by Leif's parents 30 years ago. He takes solace that children remember nothing of being pre-verbal, nothing too of being predetermined. Fresh clippings kneaded into blood and or bone for the orchids, the rose garden still where it was. The roots have not plucked into little green feet traipsing the lawn where the city organist, Leif's teacher, resides on the hill. Re-1880 Darwin, the power of movement in plants. Katita has the radio on. The heat dwells in waves that hold their bodies significantly. Time is rendered ambulate in praise of last days. Suspended heat that broadcasts its heat as summer becomes entropic. Leif likes the feeling of dying sun against his house sitting. Katita toward the information of her skin, brown broadsheets that wave as she rotates. Her opinion pages now knee-pressed into blood and or bone. When she moves, the reportage follows. 250,000 trees per annual publication in the old world. Add residuals for each solar rotation of pastoral crypto-turbine text generation. Lenticular declivities of her creases in motion. Zinc handprints pattered and dragged in waves across her back, shoulders, knees and does. Re-1880 Darwin and so on. Re-Sonambulate and so on. She has the radio on. While Katita naps, Leif relapses into reverie about recreating a documentary he's never seen. Only 30-second snippets on the National Film and Sound Archive website. Bastards from the Bush with Les Murray and Bob Ellis. Schoolmates visiting locations of formative significance, but would like to reenact in his own way. He would be Les and his mate would be Bob. They'd go back to Warners Bay High School, to the strip of fast food haunts in Belmont, to invented sites where they'll perform gestures of realism, dress in costumes of meaning, of neo-simulacrum. While Katita rouses, Leif lapses out of fictional autobiography and becomes landscape again. On the radio, the voice says, everybody wants to think they are the end of history. The voice says, there is a reason the apocalypse beckons a party. Otherwise, when would you know it's time to pop the champagne? On the radio, the voice says, humanity is void of meaning, but not of ideology. The voice says, our consciousness requires stories like lungs need air, necessary fictions. They do not speak of the real, only the gap. On the radio, the voice starts to talk about what it is to be Australian. Katita listens. To be Australian is to play pinball in a coastal leisure centre in view of the beach and its silhouettes, its late century ocean sparkle of Morse code diamonds threaded into the 10 JMW Turner paintings every man in his 40s needs to see, raised on the novels of Hermann Hesse between wars, on the affirmations of Nietzsche on what it is to be Australian, the down under overman, the Foster Tuncurry scene with new journalists sleeping on the sand, where 92 in the shade is exactly 33 to the decimal with an endless repetition of 3s to the centigrade. Apologies to the International Committee for Weights and Measures, apologies to Anders Celsius. 1948 in the shade, The same day Columbia Records introduced the very same ratio, a record that spins at 33 1/3 revolutions per minute, 18th June, when another revolution spun out, the Malayan emergency, in how to be an Australian Avro Lincoln bomber is to drop 230 kilo affirmations. You think of this as an Australian when you mosey through Murrurundi on foot, along the wobble of the suspension bridge, the two-storey garden shed with so many missing panes the size of LP album covers, rattled out perhaps by divine wind, the neighbouring yard housing so many reused glass bottles filled with dirt-brown water and offcuts of native Australian labour, of a capacity to recite the lines of early Australian poets like Albie Pope, Wilco Ernie Henley, Frosty the No Man, Ogro's Cartoon Connection, Hey Hey It's Alfie Tennyson, writing a stirring evocation of the first media war, of Churchill in the West Wing as Australia's first war president, of 1, there's not to make reply, 2, there's not to reason why, 3, there's but to do and die, with an endless repetition of threes, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, although not necessarily in that order. It was easier to make a living when you were writing as an Australian, for entry into the Oxford Dictionary of Quotations, an accessibility of meaning, a still living God, a child of 8 and an octogenarian, both able to enjoy the recitation of verse. Those songs everybody knows so well, rolled out on the pianola in nursing homes. Show tunes from 1930s Australian riverboat space operas. On the sunny side of the street, over the rainbow, as time goes by, Beautiful Dreamer, Julia Jacqueline covering Someday by The Strokes, Holly Throsby covering Berlin Chair by UMI, Slowed Reverb Test Drive by Joji, Anything Live on KEXP, Samurai Pizza Cats Episode 1, Chopin's Opus 25 No. 12 performed on the light organ, Mariana Simnet using machine learning to project Australian species of light entertainment onto her face, Corey Feldman on Howard Stern, Benjamin Gili singing Handel's Largo for his master's voice with Herbert Dawson on the light organ, A Message to Young People by Andrei Tarkovsky, delivered at the demolition of the Newcastle Council car park on the 28th of May 2022 at 12:10, just after midday, opposite the cathedral, the graves of shipwreck victims trying to make passage into the harbour along the shoreline. You think of Australian writers such as Joseph Conrad and Herman Melville, bunkmates on the Adolphe they left washed against the breakwall at Stockton, as if it wasn't their problem, as if they had nothing to do with the romancing of water. When the customs agents asked John Berger, when he emigrated to Australia, if he had any criminal convictions, and he replied in his best showman's march that he didn't know this was still a requirement. Now, this is very much not what it is to be an Australian today. On Jimmy Stewart reading a touching poem about his dog Bo, yes, this is what it means to be an Australian, to live in the Tropic of Capricorn, the largesse of the South, inventing the cochlear implant and Wi-Fi and permanent crease clothing. On the first date we might imagine between Dimphna Cusack of Black Lightning, The Sun Is Not Enough, Come In Spinner with Florence James, although not necessarily in that order, and William T. Volman, as depicted by Ron Howard in Grand Theft Auto, about the life of Australian logician Kurt Gödel. His pet name for Dimphna, Leonardo's bride, she taking carriage of a research grant into the ecology of coastal communities of the myths presented on the vertical backlit stands of pinball tables. Her a whimsigoth vision crossing the floor of the leisure centre in a crimson corset and permanent crease Starfield skirt. He in his most affordable Australian smile, not quite like that on the tarmac of a prisoner exchange, so much as the curve suggested by the presence of an inland empire. How it pulls everything in, how she pulled him towards her, allegedly, and said, advance. Katita tweaks. She asks Leif, did the voice on the radio just say advance? And Leif says, remember Johann Muller, how what we share, the closest thing to a human universal, is our innate capacity to get things wrong. And Kateta says, well, how do I call in to find out? And Leaf says that pirate radio doesn't have a talkback line. And Kateta says who? And then says, well, I'm going to find the station. And then she picks up the radio, still with decent charge with its 3 C-sized batteries, and walks the wireless down the hill into the city. Leaf watches her descend into summer as he reclines into an absence already replaced by a company of interior voices. Perhaps he should recreate all of YouTube now that it's gone, the internet archive gone, no books or CDs left to refer to, no media other than memory. Blessed day. From Tyrrell to Newcomen and then Church and Bolton, Kateta is lowered into the magma-phasing heat of the city. Sure, the smell of salt from the sand is in the air, but otherwise it's just tar and glass and radio sputter. The signal amplitude grows pregnant and not between gaps in geometry, waving voice and not, distortion from a 4-piece cutting in of the Royal Exchange as bowed guitars are fed into a Moog vocoder, ring modulating power chords, and the sparking of a dodgy 1/4-inch cable that leaks angel smiles. There is a voice that might be across transmission cutting in on Kateta's radio, the same pirate frequency or near enough. It says, I just want to make pretty women laugh forever. It says miracles shouldn't go on forever. It says that to be happy is to forgive oneself for existing, but not forever, just for a while. It says meaning is the structure we impose on the void, but not etc., just for etc. It says that to remain a nihilist into middle age is an act of courage and rebellion that should result in transmissions of love forever. This is an ordinary devotion to the long afternoon of youth, to the laughter of audiences of long-dead stand-up comics, to the mumbling of chatbots and morning pajama topologies. The summer feels significant. Kateta doesn't know if it's the holiday vibe, the combination of Christmas and New Year's, but it's there. You can feel it all around you. Mornings are wide balconies and spaghetti-strap leanings. The breeze means something real, potential. Skateboard lunches motivate absolution in oceans present and imagined, windows open and imagined, linguistics shy to offer more. Say less. Relax like you're dead with bonus life cheat codes in the back of a foreign magazine featuring a centerfold of cyber pastoralism. Our local data farms have been stacked with endless summers. The summer feels significant. When Leaf thinks back to high school and modem sleepovers when websites were new economics. A pizza company made a page where you could order online in a novel way without paying first. You waited till the driver turned up. Leaf and his mates ordered 1 or 2 pizzas as a prank using the poorly coded web form. Not sure it even worked. Hit refresh a few times. What do you know? The delivery vans just kept arriving, as if in a parade, streaming internet food. 12 pizzas, I heard? Finally, they stopped. The prank target was the host of a televised morning fitness show. On the radio, the voice keeps on now about what it is to be Australian. Kateta listens. To be Australian is to ignore the bridge load limit, to ignore both the maximum vehicle mass and maximum speed, and when the sign says only 1 vehicle at a time on the bridge, you question whether that includes the cloud of dragonflies bundled like a voluminous airship pressing their domain from a high angle, like that of a camera phone pressed at a high angle above the faces of snapdragons and fibercloth and 5 o'clock pansies to be captured and then shared with no one. To knock off at 5 o'clock and park your wife in the car outside the Kent while you walk in for a beer and then, sometime later, walk out to pass her a glass of lemon squash through the car window. For to be Australian is to appreciate chain reactions, to direct high volumes of light at peanut butter to make it glow, and to be Australian is to wear day glow to a funeral during your lunch break, the necessity of the living, even though you make everybody in your perimeter a target now, from a high angle. You and everyone you confuse with love are now in the mortal crosshairs, too visible. For to be Australian is to crave visibility within the fog of great southern anonymity, the invisible green and the sense of gold still on the statue of St. Joseph's head as you light a candle exclusively for the intent of powering stable cryptocurrencies. And so say all of us. During a final call for drinks, the one who says he will shout the entire pub a nightcap, the way grandfathers look upon this man as one who has reached the highest estimation, the better angles of our nature. And so say all of us. By double airco and white noise halo, Katita thinks she is getting closer to the source. And so, say, all, of, us, krish, advance. Conceptual art students are forming a ladder of bodies up to the top floor of Bolton Street car park. Surfers are taking their chance at riding it down in one smooth amplitude, like Ninja Turtles mid-cowabunga, part of the handshake social contracts between athletic cores and Doc Martin poets, smoking and drinking beers outside the empty post office near the YMCA, while slow dancing to coal ship horns and the rub of Earth's roof on heaven. Historians designate this last summer. A pucker lips so soft and rue roll on in Leaf's highlight reel of road trips with Katita to postage stamp towns offering choo-choo takeaways that are never open, cafeterias sidled on brassware antique stores also never open, antique trees in long grass fields ready to elevate, paperbark rockets from the old world, song lines and antinomies of current locales. Katita looks like a plastic token sliding across a board game from on high in the organist's garden. Leaf pinces his fingers as binoculars, avoiding right-wing gestures. See now as she skips past the ladder but snags a snake that drags her east through a laneway with a shower for residents to wash salt water off, though now it's used by late-night lovers who act so offended when they are yelled at to stop. But we've brought soap, they say. Come on, brother. But this isn't the 60s, not even the 90s. This is a period without suffix, ahistorical. Historians designate this vast bummer. A group shot of them and their friends behind a six-pack of soft white loaf rolls and a tub of coleslaw. All their smiling faces, or very nearly smiling, very nearly all, mirror balls swaying on the beach. On the beach. On the beach. That's where the radio host says they'll go to avoid speech. Handing off the headphones to Katita, she found them on the ground floor of the Returned and Services Leagues Club, or very nearly, not quite a radio host. They are a broken window sash, waltzed by salt currents, flung against a telegraph key that transmits a capacity to synthesize the human voice. It, like all sound, just a series of binary pulses converted into pitch due to a time delay ranging from imperceptibly small gaps to tens of thousands of years. Organ music like that of the piece being played right now in St. Bacardi Church in Halberstadt. The chord changes in the first part of the composition will occur in 46 years. Leaf won't be around to hear it. He can't hear it now. He can't hear Katita as she decides not to say anything into the microphone about what it means to be Australian, because there is no microphone and she has nothing to say. She just hums. She hums the melody from We'll Meet Again by Ross Parker and Huey Charles, sang, of course, by Vera Lynn. Did you know it features the first usage of a polyphonic synthesizer on a music recording? That's what Leif will one day tell their daughter as he looks at the water. Did you know that water is a viable data storage medium? You can fit a terabyte of household data in a tablespoon if it's part of a solution containing 12 nanoparticle clusters at a concentration of 3%. How many selfies could the ocean hold? How many large language models and simulations of the life to come? Leif will meet Katita on the beach soon, where the heat is still and is still in honest service to light. Heat that broadcasts its hate in collapsing waves.